Welcome to the Red Caps Podcast, a podcast where we dip our caps into the blood of our listeners and we ramble on about old school games. Wow, it's been a little while since I've said that. And to be honest, I had to re-record that a few times to get the sound right to my ears. But it's been a hot minute since the last episode. And if you're still subscribed and listening, thank you very so much for doing so. And if you're new, welcome. What we're going to be talking about in this episode is not the huge gap of time between the last few episodes. We'll come back to that in the future, and I'll have an episode where I talk about why the podcast went on hiatus and what happened in between. But this episode is back to our interview format where I'm finding interesting people in the gaming space and just having a chat with them. And today's chat is with John. He's coming from the Let's Quest Afterschool.org nonprofit. It's a nonprofit that helps schools and libraries set up gaming groups for kids. And we had a really cool chat, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. I don't have a whole lot else to say here. I'm going to let it all be said in the interview. But again, just before we jump into it, huge thank you to anybody who stuck with the podcast during this long break. And I really, really hope you guys all enjoy this episode. And I'll talk to you on the other side of it. John, thanks very much for being the guinea pig coming back as I try to relaunch the podcast here, getting everything back in order. As I warned you earlier, I'll warn the listeners, if anything sounds really off or silly or just goofy, it's because of me. It's been a long while since I've done this, but let's see if I can kick it off properly. John, tell us who you are and how it is that you and I started talking. What brings this episode all around?
Yeah, hi. Well, thanks for having me on as the first time back from the hiatus. So excited to be on with you. My name is John Johnson. I go online by the handle Tal DeServo, which may be relevant to anyone who spends time on Reddit. But that's how we sort of got chatting, as you had put up a post looking for folks to talk to on the podcast, and I had reached out about a couple of the things that I do, but most importantly, I chair a nonprofit that's focused on TTRPGs for K through 12 students. And so, we're here to chat about that, but, I dabble all across the hobby outside of the nonprofit as well, and I have my own website for homebrew and write my own games and all sorts of things like many of us in the hobby do, right? Most of us are homebrewing something half the time. So, but the nonprofit has been the biggest part of my TTRPG hobby since it launched.
And what does the nonprofit itself actually do? So what's its mission, and what does, I guess, what is its mission? What does it primarily focus on?
Yeah, so we support public school and library TTRPG programs that are aimed at K through 12 students. We help new ones launch, we help existing ones grow, and we make sure, really our goal is to make sure that students have a free and safe place to explore and expand themselves through tabletop role-playing games. So one of our requirements to be a program that we support is that you're free. Students can join you at no cost. That's like the big threshold that you have to meet. But other than that, we are just there to support programs in any way we can, really.
And it's pretty young, right? Like the nonprofit just kicked off like this year, a few months ago.
It is incredibly young. So we just incorporated in December, and then we got our 501c3 status earlier this year, and we didn't actually officially launch until February. So we have only been in operation for 3 months, but it has been a pretty exciting 3 months. It's been very cool. I think when people talk to us, because obviously we have conversations with all sorts of people in the TTRPG industry and schools and things, I think we leave the impression that maybe we've been around a little longer because we have, already a set way of doing things. But yeah, if you go to our website, we do just straight up say on the website, we launched in February of 2024. So we are brand spanking new.
When did the idea for it all start though? So I assume that there's quite a lead up heading up to it. So when did you decide you were going to start trying to get an organization of some sort around helping out these clubs?
Yeah. So, at the last job that I had a coworker approach me and tell me that, he had a son, and his son and his friends really wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons, but they didn't have a school club for it, and he didn't know how to play. So he was like, I know you play, you wear D&D shirts to work all the time. Can you teach me how to play? So I actually ran several sessions of D&D at my workplace for him and for some other folks who had never played before who were interested, so that he could then bring that back and do a program for his son and the students there. And then that got me thinking, like how common is that? I know that I grew up with Dungeons and Dragons, and most people know about Dungeons and Dragons, but it has never been as popular as it is now. I mean, with Stranger Things and like the COVID blow up of like Critical Role and the Dimension 20 stuff, like there are so many younger people that are into the hobby than there are I think older people at this point, like people that are my generation or later. I think we're actually in the minority of people who are interested in the hobby, as bizarre as that seems, because when you go to a hobby shop or you talk online, you're usually talking to older folks. But some of the schools we've talked to, the numbers of kids that they have in their programs are nuts. It's mind-boggling. So that got me thinking that there's probably more situations like this out there, kids who want to play, who don't have an outlet for it. And so I started reaching out to the friends that I had who are teachers, some of which who run D&D programs in their schools, some of which who don't, but, are active teachers, so would have some insight on that. And every single one of them I talked to either said, yeah, I run the program and I have more students than I have materials to be able to support, so I'm turning away students from my program, or we don't have a program like that, but I know we have students who want to be in that program. And so from there, it was a matter of figuring out how do we help? Right? How do you launch a nonprofit? Because we certainly don't have any experience doing it.
That was actually going to lead into the next question: was how difficult was it to get set up, and what sort of experience did you have around it, or who did you tap on for help to get something like that set up? Because I know for me that that would require quite a lot of research before I'd even be able to go down that road, because I have no idea. I know the rules are different in Canada than the US, but I have no idea actually how that starts up. Like how does one make the first few steps into that?
Yeah, so the answer is that starting a nonprofit is tedious and slightly complicated because a lot of the steps that you have to take are obfuscated. We're down in Florida, so we had to follow Florida's like protocols to do that. But the other side of that coin is that it's also scarily easy to launch a nonprofit. Like I was a little taken aback at how simple it was to launch a nonprofit. It was just I didn't know what to do, right? I didn't know where the starting point was, because there's a flow, right? It's which paperwork do you file first? Do I have to have a plan in place? So I need budgets in place. The honest answer is not really. There's not really a whole lot that you just have to know which few forms to fill out. Luckily, there is another nonprofit that does basically what we do. They've been around longer than us. But when I was looking around, one of the first things I did, because in my day job, I work in product. And so the first thing I did was market research, right? How many other organizations are doing what we do? And the answer was not really any, was what I found initially. It was really hard for me to locate any nonprofits that they're just there to donate to schools to help programs grow. A lot of individual businesses do that, right? You can reach out to TTRPG publishers or dice companies or VTT providers, and they will give things to schools and libraries, but there's no one that like brings it all together, right? If you're going to do that, you need to contact the publisher, and they need to contact dice people, and you need to do it all individually. They all have their own little pipelines. And then the programs that do run D&D for students that we found or help schools, they charged, in some cases, like insane entry fees. And we're talking, I saw programs that are nonprofits that for a kid to participate in like a campaign they do for a year, it was $700 a kid.
Wow.
And all I'm thinking is like the kids who need a place after school to spend time and hang out with friends. But yeah, those families and those kids, they don't have $700. I mean, like I grew up in like a middle-class family. My parents were going to drop $700 for me to play Dungeons and Dragons for the year. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And so that was another like flag for us to say, okay, well, here's the thing that we definitely need to avoid, right? We need to avoid these huge barriers to entry. And after some digging, I actually ran into the nonprofit that I mentioned, who's been around longer than us, is called Tabletop Alliance. Um, so they're really great. So for anyone listening, look us up, but also, check them out as well. I was actually able to get into contact with Bruce Brown, who is their president and founder. A very nice guy, and he was nice enough to get on a phone call with me and basically like walk me through how he got his started, what he recommends, what are some pitfalls, and like how to help the program grow. So, I don't want to say that without him we wouldn't have gotten off the ground, but having the help of someone who's already done it was hugely beneficial for us. And I can't thank him enough for, taking my phone call and spending like, an hour or two on the phone with me to go through all the ins and outs, because that was huge, but it gave us a basis of steps for how to get off the ground, and it made us feel a lot more comfortable with what we were doing. And it also just it showed that there's room for multiple nonprofits to be doing this. There's so many schools out there with so many kids who want to play D&D that even though they've been around longer, they have a larger spread than us. We're not businesses in competition, right? We're nonprofits who want to help the same group of people. So we're allies, right? We're not competitors. And that was, so it was very nice to have, assistance and an ally in that process.
Yeah, you come across that quite a bit in the hobby. I mean, even for folks that are like launching their first Kickstarters or what have you, you'll often hear stories of, I don't think I ever would have gotten through this Kickstarter had I not sat down and had a conversation with somebody who I guess technically would be a competitor, but in this space, it's just another resource, somebody who's cheering you on just as much as you're cheering them on. So it's really good to hear that you were able to find somebody like that and get through it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of that sort of like allyship in the TTRPG hobby in particular, because most of us are more than happy to fill our shelves with multiple TTRPGs, right? It's not like
you can't see, but over here, yeah.
Yeah, right. You don't buy one and then you're like, well, I guess I'm done buying tabletop role-playing games. Like everyone is happy to see like indie publishers and people get their creations published or self-published. It's all very exciting. So it's one of the best parts of the hobby.
Speaking of publishers, as you guys are going through this, have you partnered with any particular publisher, or do you have any sort of a relationship with specific game makers or dice folks or anything like that you're saying? Has there been people that you've been able to create a good partnership with to help out the schools?
Yeah, so I don't want to say partnership because that kind of implies maybe, like a business relationship, but we do have like donors essentially. So the first company out the gate that responded to us, because when we were looking for how are we going to get materials out to people, the first thing we were doing was just buying things, right? If we got contacted by a program, we would just buy it as the nonprofit and then ship it to them, which obviously that's difficult to maintain a budget if you're having to buy every single thing. At least if you're trying to grow anyway, you're going to burn through your budget pretty quick. So we did blast emails, right, to as many companies as we could think of, like, hey, here's what we're doing. If you want to donate product to us, let us know. And the first one that reached out was Demiplane. If you're familiar with Demiplane Nexus, they do virtual books. They have like Avatar Legends, and they have a bunch of the Chronicles of Darkness books, for vampire and werewolf, and Pathfinder 2e and all that. They have a digital platform for it. So they were the first one to get to us, and they were incredible. I mean, they were great to work with, and they essentially gave us open access to provide access to their platform and everything that's on it to any program that reaches out to us. So schools, libraries who are able to use digital books, it's more common with libraries than it is with schools, but a lot of libraries have computers. When they run their games, they have access to computers. We can give them access to Demiplane's entire library of digital content at zero cost to us, at zero cost to them. So that was the first one that ever got back to us. They were lightning quick. I think they responded back within a few days, and we had access to their stuff. It was crazy. Since then, though, I mean, we've had really great responses. Hit Point Press, who publishes Humblewood, sent us copies of Humblewood. I think their new one is Sinaloa. That's like their Islander type game. But I'm a big fan of Humblewood myself, which is one of the reasons I reached out to them. It's one of my favorite settings to run for 5th edition. So they sent us over copies. Magpie Games sent us over copies of Avatar Legends, which is a big one because especially since Netflix has their Avatar show now, it's getting a resurgence. So kids are interested in playing an Avatar: The Last Airbender role-playing game. I should definitely say that is the Avatar: The Last Airbender role-playing game and not the Blue James Cameron Avatar.
Although that would be an interesting role-playing game to play as well.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be a little meta, right? When you're the player that embodies the human that embodies the Navi. Yeah. And then most recently, Ninth Level Games. We had the opportunity to have a conversation with the CEO at Ninth Level Games, and they sent us over, I mean, pretty much every game that they publish. I don't know if you've ever looked at any of their stuff before, but they have really great kid-friendly materials. A lot of it is inspired by Saturday morning cartoons, where you play like princesses, or you play Pegasus, or you play one of them is Nancy Druid, where you're Girl Scout like detectives. And then they have like a dungeon crawler called Mazes. So they sent us copies of all of that. So we're now able to give those really great kid-friendly rules-light games out to schools, which is fantastic.
I've seen their book, Kobolds Ate My Baby,
yes,
going around. I've seen that. I'm not sure if that's brand new for them. I've seen that in the zeitgeist around.
Yeah,
around
I think that was their first big one. Was that one, and then it just got a new version came out. So you're probably seeing it again now, thanks to that new version. They're really great. Their polymorph system is a lot of fun. That's what like powers all of their games. And then even outside of that, just like industry people, Jacqueline Lewis is an author. She wrote a book called Rolling with the Youth. It's about like running safe RPGs for kids and giving them a safe space. And so we had the opportunity to speak with her. She sent us copies of her book so that now not only can we give teachers and like librarians RPG material, right? Here's stuff to run your game. Like here's education material for you as someone running a game, like how to make it a comfortable place for young players, right? They're not adults. Who knows, what they might be comfortable with or not comfortable with. We're all familiar at this point, with X cards and things like that in the modern era of games, but that kind of brings it into specifically running games for kids, which is really awesome. And then I mean, I couldn't name all of the people that we've had the opportunity to talk with at this point in the industry. It's been really, really incredible.
That's awesome to hear. The one common thing I hear from a lot of indie creators, and it's more of them at a certain point, I think, venting about how large D&D is and how difficult it is to get an audience or get people to play their games. Have you guys ran into that a lot, where the kids know of D&D, they want to play D&D, and anything else is it a difficult sell, or is it generally an easy sell to get them to play other games? Or the feedback, I guess, maybe from the clubs that have come back to you on that?
Yeah. D&D's presence is oppressive, I think is the word I would use. It does kind of crush all of the other games a lot of the time. And we run into that too, right? When people initially reach out to us, it's almost always for, we need D&D 5e material, right? Because I mean, it's an iconic name, right? When kids are learning about, they're learning about the games in pop culture, they're seeing the Stranger Things, right? They're seeing Critical Role and Dimension 20. They're seeing the big things in pop culture for role-playing games. It's D&D. It's Dungeons and Dragons. There are even, I mean, most of the people we talk to, right, they know the hobby is D&D, not as TTRPGs. Now, that being said, a lot of the people, the organizers that we speak with, are excited to get the extra games to kind of wean their players off of D&D a little bit. They're like, yeah, D&D is what we're playing now. We have a D&D program. I would love to get some indie titles so that I can introduce those to the kids as well and like start a side group. So we usually are supplying primarily Dungeons and Dragons and then able to slip in some of the other interesting titles on the side. And then they'll do like one table of that and see how popular it gets while they maintain the Dungeons and Dragons. Though I will say Avatar Legends, very popular. Like that has been a big one that people have been excited when we say that we can easily get that to them.
Have you guys tried or had any success with some of the more free indie games or some of the OSR games? Like a game that I highly recommend to folks when they're first starting is Basic Fantasy role playing game, because it's open source, it's completely free, and if you do want physical materials, you can get them for next to no cost. It's basically at cost. Um, is has there been any success with that, or is it more again a style thing where it's difficult to get them into that?
So we like to provide links to the free ones. So typically we go, hey, here's what we're packaging up and sending you. It's 5e, it's maybe this in the game. Also, like I'm going to share with you links to like Cairn, to Quest, to like a lot of those free RPGs. So things that we're not necessarily like, we don't need to give them, they're free, right? Other
Exactly.
resources, right? So we don't just give them the physical materials, we'll also provide them links to other games and other things they can go get for free to expand their group out if they're interested in that. And in some cases, in at least a few cases, we haven't needed to go beyond the free stuff. Once they found that, they can get access to, they're like, oh, we're going to start with this. We don't need the physical materials anymore. So it's been something we do. I would generally consider it supplemental. Like here's kind of a way that you can expand into other games if you're interested. It's at no cost to you. It's at no cost to us, which has been kind of an interesting dynamic because we found that people seem to feel guilty taking receiving things from us. I think it's just because we're a nonprofit. And so it's like, well, I don't want to take from you when you could give it to another program, right? So many of the programs think that that they're less deserving of the donation than another program might be. They're not struggling enough. But in reality, we have enough to support programs, whoever reaches out to us. And if you have more students to play than you have materials to play for them, then like you're just as deserving as the next program that comes along, right? We want to make sure every kid gets the opportunity to play TTRPGs.
So how's the logistics of that all work? So you're saying that you package up and you mail it out to them. Are you sitting with like a garage full of tabletop RPGs that are waiting to be sent out, or is it more of a curated thing where the school's contacting you or the library's contacting you and you're building a kind of a custom package and gathering materials and sending them out at that point in time?
Yeah, we currently they're stored in the attic of my house, not in a storage facility, but it's a storage room we have upstairs. It's not actually the attic; it's just the second story. There's a room upstairs we store them in. But it's a mixed bag. So if they only want things we have on hand, then we pack those up and we ship them out from our like business box at UPS, and get it out to them. But if there's things that we don't have, like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, because Wizards of the Coast has their own program for providing things to educators. They have an educator program, but they run out of stuff. So they are often they've given away all their stuff by the time teachers reach out to them. So those ones are different because we don't keep 5e stuff on hand. It tends to be like kind of expensive to keep it, to just like buy a bunch of it in bulk. So we do that to order. And so usually what happens is we end up getting like a split package, right? We end up shipping out, ordering and shipping the like D&D 5e materials or things we don't have on hand from like where we order them from. And then anything we have on hand, we package up here and then ship out of our like business box at UPS.
Gotcha. And what are you finding is the typical age groups that are kind of starting up in these clubs? Is this more like younger kids, like K to 8, or is it more the teenage ages that are going through?
It has been a lot of middle schools. Like that has been like the sweet spot, it seems, for these programs. I honestly thought it would be more high schoolers, to be honest. I thought that we would get way more requests from high schools, but it is mostly middle school age programs, both at the schools and at the libraries. We just get a lot of middle schools and we get a lot of the libraries that are running programs that are, I don't know that they're targeted at middle schoolers, but when they tell us their demographics, they're almost always middle school age. Now, they do try and expand those. So a lot of the time, they're interested in like the 9th level game stuff as supplemental so that they can start a younger group. because, you know, in some of the cases they aren't doing it because they don't really think D&D 5e is really going to be great for like elementary school kids, right? And it's probably not. There's quite a bit going on it. You'd have to run a slim down version of it, and there are some great hacks for that. But yeah, it's almost always middle schoolers.
Interesting. What is in your mind? So you're able to give a single suggestion and it's just taken at face value. What is your fantastic first suggestion as a first adventure for, say, middle school kids?
For Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition specifically?
For any, what is, if you've got the ideal blank slate that you can put an adventure in any system in front of a group of middle school kids, what are they playing and why?
It's tough. It's a tough question. Okay, blank. I'm going to assume they're beginner players because it's blank slate, and this is probably not going to be the most popular because I just got done saying that 5e is oppressive, which I think is true. However, I do think that the Phandelver adventure that Wizards did for 5e is very good for new players. I think it does a great job bringing them into the tropes of role-playing games with the quest and the Cave of Goblins and all that. So I think I would probably start there. Now that may come from just having played a lot of 5th edition. I play a lot of different games, but as with a lot of people, there's 5th edition is just such a big presence that a lot of what I played is 5th edition. And I have run the Phandelver encounter or adventure multiple times, including the thing that kicked us all off when I was teaching people how to play at that old job. I use that adventure to teach them because I think that's the best starter adventure that Wizards of the Coast has done for 5th edition. And I think that some of the other games are harder to pick up without. No, how do I say this? I don't think that some of the other games, I don't know that they have as strong starter adventures. Like Avatar Legends, for instance. I really love Avatar Legends. I run it for my friends here down in Florida, but I don't think that they have a really strong starting adventure that really teaches the players the game and TTRPGs in general. Aside from the fact that Powered by the Apocalypse games can be a little weird if you're expecting, you know, a D&D type game.
Yeah. For me, I think so. I'm going to disagree with you on almost both points. I do agree that the starter set's really good. I love a good starter set. I'm not a 5e fan so much anymore. I've played it. I'm kind of done with 5e personally.
There's lots of reasons not to be a fan at this point.
Yeah. But I own the beginner box set. I also own what I think is the better beginner's box set, the one with the dragon. I just blanked on its name. Icewind Dragon or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Icespire Peak or whatever.
Yeah.
That one I thought was a really good adventure just because of the way they kind of did the quest boards and they had some better materials in the box for it. Mm-hmm. But another one I would put out for you, I'm sure you've heard of it, but if not, I just plug it anyhow because I love the game. I've used it with my son as well. Is Mouse Ritter. I think that's a fantastic game for kids to try out. It's got some neat mechanics to it, but it's cute and cuddly, and it's a nice little system that I think gets a lot of the same tropes in as well.
Yeah, I really like Mouse Ritter. I think I do think that the inventory system with like the blocks and the spaces in the bag is really great to help kids like understand what they can carry and things like that. I love Mouse Ritter. I think that when it comes to like D&D, once again, I bring it back to like pop culture and it being such an anchor, is that so many kids are expecting like Lord of the Rings, elves and dwarves and humans. And like, I know, like I have my beef with 5e and with all of that at this point as well. But I think that those are strong staples that help bring kids in, that it gives them an already like strong starting point. So I definitely vouch for Mouse Ritter as a game and a great beginner game. It's just not where I would,
Yeah, you're completely right. I mean, it's the reason I think that fantasy games succeed where, say, science fiction games don't reach the same level of popularity is because there isn't that shared mind share of what an RPG is. Most people they go to default fantasy land, and that's how they view a game. And so when you throw it into a horror game or a science fiction game or any of the other genres, which are all good games, they don't get the same audience because there isn't the same shared mindset to it.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, yeah, I mean, so much of fantasy is just built on top of Tolkien, but sci-fi doesn't really have that same thing, unless you're talking like, Asimov and robotics. That there just really isn't the same basis. The other thing is, I would love to recommend some of the really cool, like indie games that live in fantasy. I haven't had the chance to check out Dragonbane yet, so that I might pivot over to that being a recommendation once I experience that. But so many of the like indie and OSR or OSR like games that I really like, they're just not like appropriate for kids. They have like content in the book that is just, you couldn't hand it to a teacher and to students without having to like redact portions of it. And that has been a really specific hurdle we've had to get over, because there's so many games I love and so many creators I love that I could never bring the material to a student or a teacher or a librarian. Like, man, do I love me some Morkborg, but like, there's no way that ever hits a table, right?
Right. No, I agree. I think it's a case of the creators are creating for themselves and for the tables that they're playing at. So I don't think they so much consider the fact that they might be playing to a much younger audience. Not that that's a bad thing. It's probably not entering their mind as they're going through the creation process.
Yeah, and I do want to take this opportunity to shout out some like really cool games who do that, who are angling at kids specifically. There is a game that is in the works right now by Luck of Legends that's called Luna Uni, that like is focused on creative writing, like teaching kids creative writing through play. So when they like do things in the scenario, they write out what their characters are doing. It allows like teachers to run TTRPGs for an entire classroom as creative writing exercises, and it has mechanics to back it up, which is super cool. There's a game called Inspire Isles. I don't know if you've ever heard of that game.
That one sounds familiar, actually.
Yeah, this one is out now, so you can go buy this. Actually, there's a second book out now, and it teaches the basics of sign language. So in that game, to cast spells, you use the basic elements, and you do that by signing the letters of the elements. So if you're going to do fire, you have to sign FIRE, and there's all these recommendations for basic and more advanced versions and all these things. So like, it doesn't teach them end to end, but it gives them a basis for sign language, and it's designed to be used for kids. And there's just so much cool stuff like that hiding in the nooks and crannies that most people in the hobby, you just don't know about it, because unless you're specifically looking for material for kids, you're never going to bump into that stuff. But yeah.
Whenever when I first introduced my son to role playing games at all, when he was in K levels, what I did was, rather than having him roll to see if he hit or how much damage he would do, we would just take his math flashcards. And when he wanted to hit something, I would hold up the flashcard and say, "Can you tell me what the answer is?" And he gave me the answer right, well, you hit. And nice. So we just did a little system like that. But
that would be a really cool basis for like a tutoring RPG.
Yeah.
Just put an extra T in there, a TTRPG.
So I know it's young. I know it's only been around for a few months, but has there been a favorite success story so far, or what would be the dream success story? What's the letter that when you created this, when you got all the paperwork done, that you're like, oh, I can't wait till I hear something like this happen, come back into my mailbox?
I mean, there have been a couple notable ones. So I'll talk about those, and I'll talk about something that is in the works that I can't speak to specifics on, but that I have high hopes for. Actually a couple things, but so the first donation we ever made was to a middle school down here in Florida, and they had 46 students in their program. They're not a big middle school, and they were so excited to get the donation to run the program that we did the drop off in person, because they were just down the road from us. So it was very exciting to be able to do an in-person drop-off, and we just missed the teacher who wanted to receive the drop-off. And so as we we're driving out, a coworker of hers runs out to our car to just say how excited they are to get their materials, and to say, oh, she couldn't make it out. Like, they were supposed to call her to come pick it up, and they didn't. But she just wants to tell you, how happy she is and how thankful she is, and the kids are going to love it. And then we got a follow-up email from the original teacher, basically saying all the same things about how excited they are. And it was just really nice to see people face to face, right? Even if it wasn't the exact person. And then we donated to a library, and they did send us pictures after receiving all the materials of all of the kids holding up all the materials and with their tables.
Is that the one I see on the website with the thank you?
Yes.
Yes, that's an awesome picture. Folks should definitely go see the website, the Let's Quest After School.org. There's the picture he's describing is there. It's kids holding up battle mats with the thank you written out on it. It's really, really, really cool. But sorry, continue.
No. Yeah, I guess we probably should say I don't think we had said the website name. Yeah,
we'll have all the ways to reach you and everything in the show notes. But yes, Let's Quest After School.org.
Yeah. So yeah, that was that was really awesome. And you know what the crazy thing is, if you look at that picture, growing up when I was in the hobby, because my older brother got me into the hobby. He's 7 years older than I am. So I've been into it since I was in elementary school. The entire time I have grown up, the hobby has been just dudes. It's just been so many men, it's not a lot of gaming is like that, right? And you sort of see that shift, right? A lot of video games were like that when I was growing up too. But when I went to local game shops and stuff, it was always dominated by male players. But in that picture, it's like all girls. And it's so exciting to see that many like young girls joining the hobby. Something that when I was growing up, I never saw that. It was always me and like a handful of guys, and we go to the hobby shop, and it was 5 other groups that looked just like us.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was looking for. I put a post up on Twitter there today, just saying, hey, if you're going to ask questions to a nonprofit that was in this space that's helping out clubs, what would you want to know? What would you ask? And I was looking for a picture to put up. I wanted to get like an old timey picture, and so I was looking through. There was these people that had pictures of like their high school yearbooks or their middle school yearbooks from back in the 80s, and even that was much more mixed than what I remember gaming groups being like. It was there was a lot of girls that were in the class. It looking at it now, it didn't look like what I remember of being all the stereotypical geeks. So even back then, I think there's a misconception of exactly how 4 guys in their basement it was dominated by. I think at least when it came to the stuff that happened in schools, I think it was probably a lot more mixed there as well. But that's awesome to hear that you're seeing that in today's world as well.
Yeah, and you're probably right? Especially at schools, I'm sure that was true. I can really only speak to what I remember growing up, right? Unfortunately, I don't have the demographics from back then. But yeah, you're probably right. But that is really really interesting. But the thing that has me the most excited, because as you mentioned, brand new, right? We started in February. We're really expecting a ramp up going into the school year, right? As school is wrapping up, it's going to get quieter, we anticipate, and then as we get to summer, we get to new school year, we expect to blow up. But one of the conversations that we've been having was with an entire school district down here, that they're talking about starting a district level TTRPG program for all of their schools. So we were talking to them about assisting with that, not just providing materials for it, but providing like presentations, on the benefits of it, helping train their teachers on how to run it, how to do it safely, how to create safe space for the students. That is the thing that I think gets me the most excited, because hitting individual programs is great, and it's great to see the impact, but it's so small, and there are so many schools out there that there are kids who want these programs that if they don't have a teacher who's already into the hobby, it's really hard to get a program like that started.
Can I set a flare goal for you for like however far out in the future you want to say it?
Sure.
But something that I think would be really, really cool that I haven't heard anybody mention before, but would fit well to what you were just describing in terms of like a whole school district kind of getting on like a program like that, is set up a con for kids only, a tabletop RPG con just for school age kids, and have have talks for the teachers to come and learn about the games, have it so that the kids can come and experience, have it be an age gated K-12 convention for tabletop RPGs. I think that would be pretty amazing. I think it'd be pretty cool to see how that would look and how the kids would react to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that would be very cool. Some of the programs we talk to with when they're larger, you kind of think, I think when you imagine it, or at least when I did, I imagined that the teachers were probably the ones, not just organizing, but running the games. And in a lot of these programs, it's the kids that run the games. The teachers are there for like oversight purposes, but it's the kids who take the books, who learn the game, who run it for the other students. I mean, to the point, we had one of the programs that theirs were so dedicated. They were sharing like one copy of Curse of Strahd and one DMG for like 40 students, and their DMs would take turns photocopying the sections that they needed, and then like running out of the photocopied sections, and then handwriting all of their notes if they drifted off the photocopy stuff. So they just have like journals of just hand transcribed adventure, basically.
Careful now, you say that too loud, and Wizards is going to start making blue maps and stuff again to defeat the photocopiers. but that's awesome to hear. I mean, I'm glad that there's somebody like yourselves that can get them more resources, but to know that they were that into it, that they're sharing it and dog-earing out some well-loved books. I mean, I go back and grab I go back to buy used copies of first edition books.
Yeah.
And it's always fun seeing little notes and stuff that are written in that. I can just imagine if somebody, 10, 15 years from now stumbles across that one Curse of Strahd module and all the little notes and everything else that would be included in the margins and what have you. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. It's really awesome to hear about the passion that the kids have for the hobby. It's really great.
So you're saying that often it's the kids that are the ones that are initiating it. They're the ones that are excited about it. I've talked to a lot of teachers over times here, and there does seem to be a connection between teachers and folks that are in RPGs. It's a weird connection, but how often it comes up is what I mean by the weird connection. It's like I'll talk to a creator. And it's like, oh yeah, I was a teacher or I was a professor. I was like, man, it's almost like it's a requirement. It seems like in some cases, but for folks that aren't that, what's your advice on them starting up a group? So if besides just saying reach out to us, which obviously is the case, but how do they even get to the point where how do they approach the kids or how should they approach their administration to get started on that?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, each school is going to have different requirements for starting the after school programs and stuff like that. So they're going to have to go through those hurdles. If you're talking about going to an administration, I guess I should also start by saying I also briefly substitute taught. I have a degree in education.
I figured there had to be that connection there as well. I was kind of teeing that up, but yeah.
And we do have an actual teacher on our board who teaches professionally as well, though. So I mean, if you're talking to your administration, oftentimes the sell is going to have to be benefit to the students. It's some schools, they don't want you to just run an after school program that's just a thing to take up students' time or a thing for them to spend time doing after school. Some don't want to put resources towards that, right? There's limited space at a school. There's limited funds. There are so many resources online that can provide like studies that have papers on the impacts of TTRPGs, that have how to apply TTRPGs to education. There is a very incredible Discord as well that's out there. It's called TTRPG in Education. I don't remember where the link I originally found was at. I believe I got it through luckoflegends.com, but any teachers out there who want a space where they can interact with other educators who want to use or who do use TTRPGs in an education and scientific capacity, reach out to us or try and find it online, and we can give you a link to the Discord because it's filled with people who have already done it. So one, there's people out there who have already done it. So find them, and you can find them through us. Two, the material out there for the studies and the papers, they have been cataloged by people. Most notably, Steph C at TTRPGkids.com has an exhaustive website. It is just a giant website filled with recommendations for RPGs for kids, for hacks for RPGs, papers that have been written, studies that have been done, articles that cover all sorts of topics about TTRPGs and kids. If you are looking for how do I do TTRPGs and kids, go check out TTRPGkids.com. They're great. The only thing is there's so much there, it can be hard to get, like, it can be easy to get lost. So kind of know what you're looking for when you're going there. So when it comes to the administration, like starting it off from the official side, that's what I would say is go check out those resources. And when it comes to the students, everything I have heard from everyone I've talked to is you don't need to sell this to kids. You don't need to recruit kids for it. That program that had 46 students, the first program we dropped off to, one of the questions I asked was, I said, hey, you're not that big of a middle school. How did you get 46 kids in your D&D program? Did you like put up flyers? Did you recruit? Like, have you been around a while? And she goes, oh, no, there was just a hunger for it. Like, we started the club and 46 kids showed up. Just, that was it. All they had to do was exist. And that many kids showed up. So I guarantee no matter what school you're at, you have kids who are interested in this hobby. All you have to do is create a space for them to be able to come partake in the hobby. And if you have any, questions, how do I run RPGs? How do I do it for kids? Anything like that. Once again, that's what we are here to help with. Let's Quest is here to assist you on that journey. And that Discord that I mentioned and that website, TTRPG Kids, they're invaluable resources.
All right, I got a couple last questions for you. As I know we're coming up on time, but I got a couple more, and then I'll let you get out of here. So first one is a nice fun one. This is just switching away from the nonprofit and going into your gaming mind. All right, we're playing a game, or you're running a game, and I'm about to open this door in a dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
You roll on your random table, and it tells you that there's going to be 3 goblins, a duck, and an empty suit of armor on the other side of the door. When I open the door, what am I seeing?
Okay.
Really sticking right on the spot here.
No. Okay, so I think what you're seeing is you're seeing a nothing really, because you open the door and then you don't see anything. You see an empty room, but you hear like the echoed, like enhanced quacking of a duck that's been shoved in a suit of armor hidden around some corner of the room to make it seem more intense and more menacing. And of course, the second you go over to investigate, 3 goblins pop out from behind the door to like shank you and cut your ankles.
Ah, good old goblin trap. They're using the duck as a distraction.
Of course.
Wow.
They'll probably eat it later though. Like, let's be real. And if they're my players, 100% guarantee they adopt the duck without fail.
Good stuff. All right, here's a more serious question. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I haven't? Whenever we first started talking about coming onto the show, I'm sure you must have had. If you're anything like me, you run scenarios in your head, and you're like, "Man, I hope he asks me this because I got an answer for it." What have I not asked you that I should have?
Let's go through the basics of like our nonprofit and like the numbers wise, right, and our requirements. So I do want to say that we do have some requirements for the schools and libraries that we support. One, they have to be public. We don't give to schools that require like tuition typically, or that there's any like threshold of entry. We do technically will consider private schools, but we're very wary of them because they often come with ideologies that may not align with us. So that is another thing I want to like make very clear, that Let's Quest is a very LGBTQIA plus friendly organization. We don't partner with companies or with programs that are any way against that message. And that's a thing that we look into. You can reach out to us through our website. We have a contact form. if you are an educator or your librarian who wants to contact us, just use that and use your like official domain email, right? Your school address, your library address. That's how we verify that you're actually with a program, like a school or a library, so that, you know, Steve down the street who just really likes to collect books doesn't email us and try and like ring us for a bunch of free materials. So those are the hurdles, you know, that you have to cross. They're not very high. So if you're in a public school or a library, you can cross those hurdles. The other thing is, if you go to our website, all of our documents are public. All of our filings are public. All of our board meeting notes are public. We will also be publishing like our full financials very, very soon. Our treasurer is working on that. So that will be, you'll be able to see how much money do we bring in materials and cash, how much of it goes out. So you can see everything that we do financial wise. Like we are a 100% as transparent as we can possibly be organization. We are still just the 5 board members. We actually just expanded our board from 4 to 5. So, you know, sometimes it takes us a little bit of time to get things like a financial sheet ready, because we have to scrape obviously private information off of it. But I do want to make sure that everyone knows that we are as transparent as we can possibly be. And you can find that all on our website. You can also find the numbers, like how many students we've like donated, like how many students worth of programs we've donated to, the average cost per student, and the average program size we've donated to. And if you do want to support us, you can donate directly through our website through like a monthly donation or through a one-time donation. Or if you have material goods that you want to donate to us, just send us a contact form. If you have, for some reason, you used to run a game store or something, and now you have an inventory of 20 books that's been sitting in, you know, a shelf somewhere, and you don't know what to do with them, donate them to us and maybe get a tax break. You know, it's we're here. We will also be at Gen Con this year. So you may see myself and our vice chair, Edward, roaming the floor. We'll have Let's Quest shirts on. So anyone who's going to Gen Con, you can keep an eye out for us, and we're happy to chat. We will also be at the trade day. For anyone who's attending the trade day there, we'll be giving a presentation at Gen Con's trade day. And then I think the last thing I want to mention, just because I think it is very cool, is that if you saw, NASA put out a D&D adventure.
I did hear about that, yes.
So if you go to our website under our resources page, one of the resources we have there is the NASA D&D adventure. But I was lucky enough to have a conversation with Christina Mitchell, who was the author of that. And so there is a written write-up of that interview on that page as well. So you can go see an interview with the person who wrote that NASA adventure.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's Lost
Universe. Yes. Yeah, it's got a really interesting premise, and it teaches a lot of like scientific concepts about space. It's really cool. For anyone who hasn't taken a peek at it, it's really neat.
Awesome. So we'll have in the show notes the link to the Let's Quest After School website, Twitter account, and all that great stuff. Before we sign off, you mentioned that there's a bunch of stuff that you also do on the side as far as games you've created, content you've made. Where can people find that stuff of yours that's separate maybe from the nonprofit?
Yeah, so I do homebrew for 5th edition and for Merkborg on my website taldastavern.com. So like I said, I go online. The handle Talda Servo is my handle. So if you are on the OSR Reddits or the Merkborg Reddits or r/RPG, you may see me on there. But my website is taldastavern.org. It's got some material there, and no place to advertise this. We're just excited. I'm working with one of my friends who's working on a science fantasy book on her own. She's actually a published author. She wrote, I just blanked on. I own the books on my shelf. And I'm like,
I do that all the time. You'll constantly, anybody who ever gets onto the show with me, when we're on the webcam, you'll see me turn over to my right at my shelf, and I'm just kind of staring at it, trying to find the book or game that I want to mention at the time. Because I do the same thing. I end up, I'm like, it's this one. I know where it is, if I can reach for it, but the name just escapes me. But yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from with that.
Oh, I will be. I'm going to go grab the book off my shelf. Give me 1 second, because I would be hard pressed to not give them a shout out.
So while he's out getting the book, the Lost Universe is the NASA program that he was talking about. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. The Last Quest After School.org, I'll have a link to in the show notes, as well as John's Twitter for it, and a link to his Reddit account. And I will get a link to his personal website as well. So if you're interested at all, you'll be able to jump on there and see that, and see all the interesting resources they have for that sort of stuff. It's, for me, it's been really kind of cool to see how the nonprofit side of this works in terms of getting stuff set up for kids, and the support that he's kind of putting out there. So I think it'll be very cool to for everybody to jump in and help them out with that. Were you able to find the book?
Well, my very smart wife was like, "Why don't you just go check your orders from when you bought the book?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah, Amazon knows all.
Yeah, yeah. Knights of Valhalla. That's it.
Okay.
I didn't even need to find it. I just scrolled far enough. My brain turned on. So the author of Knights of Valhalla, yeah, she's working on a space fantasy book called Voidfarers. And she has asked me to write the TTRPG book for it. So we are working on that now. So that's just an exciting side thing for us, and we're doing that in the basic role-playing game system. So we're actually going to submit it for their competition they have that closes this month.
Very cool.
So that we can pay artists for cool art, you know.
Very, very neat. All right, well, John, thank you very much for coming on to the show and chatting with me about this. I think it's an awesome program. I hope you can come back, like, mid next year, once the school year is kicked off, and let me know how much it's grown, or how the kids are doing with stuff. And I'm interested to hear about the book as well. I think that'd be kind of neat to have something go through the competition and then come out and get a bunch of extra art, what have you. That'd be really cool. So
yeah, well,
hopefully you'll come back and chat with me more about that at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be more than happy to. And please, anyone listening, like, teacher, librarian, come to the site so we can help the program. We're all about it. Don't be shy. And I thank you so much for having us on, or having me on rather, so that we can spread the word about our existence.
Awesome. All right, folks, I'm going to cut to future me that's doing the editing, and we'll go from there. But thank you, John, again so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Red Caps podcast. I remember how this outro goes. I hope you enjoyed, that you learned something, and that you are eager to come back for more. www.theredcaps.net has all the links to all the ways to contact me, and I'd love to hear from you. So again, I am back, and thank you so very much for listening and sticking with it. Remember, never let your caps dry out. Stay safe. Have fun. We'll talk again soon. Take care.